In this episode of Uplift and Elevate, we welcome Valerie. Valerie is a senior media and entertainment lawyer, renowned for her vast experience shaping the diverse realms of film, television, and theater. With a multifaceted career marked by hands-on expertise in talent agreements, rights management, and employment law, she has made significant contributions to the industry. Beyond her legal prowess, Valerie's journey embodies resilience and determination, overcoming burnout to inspire others. Her narrative not only showcases legal acumen, but also personal triumph, positioning her as a pivotal figure in the ever evolving landscape of media and entertainment law. Welcome, Valerie. Thanks for taking the time to speak to us today. I'm just going to dive right in and ask you about your early life, and if you can share a little bit more about that and how that shaped to be the person you are today.
So thank you first of all for having me. It's a real privilege. So my early life, actually, I grew up in the Caribbean and I lived there until I was 8 years old. And I would say that that was incredibly formative. Childhood memories, one of the strongest ones is Sesame Street. It has formed me as a person. I think it still forms me as a person. So I think the whole attitude of difference and tolerance and kindness and soft fluffy toys. I think that that has all kind of continued with me all the way through my life.
And then any hobbies growing up?
When we moved over so I moved to Scotland initially, and my mom was one of these people. I think it was a combination of wanting us to do lots of stuff because there was things to be done, certainly compared to Trinidad, and probably wanting us out of the house. So I had a full program of activities. So I did all kinds of dancing. I did ballet dancing, tap. I did Highland dancing, which is one of the most ridiculous visuals you could possibly imagine, because I was really tall and dancing around swords and stuff like that. I did horse riding. So I grew up being quite busy and having interests, and also doing things that I started off being not very good at. So I wasn't a natural with lots of stuff. I grew really tall. It took me until I was probably in my early 20s before I had proper control of all of my limbs. Well, when I say all of my limbs, I only had four, and I still do. But there was a lot of real estate to manage, and it took a while to get into it. So I was really crap at sports.
Any sort of first job stories or any challenges that you faced early on in your career, especially getting into your first job?
My career trajectory was non-standard because basically in terms of career stuff, I did my law degree in Scotland. I finished that, and at that point I had a really strong sense I don't want to stay here to practice. That's not what I want to do. I didn't know what I actually did want to do, and an opportunity came up for moving to Canada, which is a story unto itself, but it came up and I thought, okay, I can go to Canada and not know what to do there rather than not know what to do in Scotland. And that's actually what I did. So I went off to Canada, and I did a series of different type of jobs. I've done my time as a telemarketer, all sorts of stuff, complete with law degree. And one of the jobs that I fell into through some connections was working for an animation production company. And I loved it. And I didn't know that that sort of thing was available as work, was to make cartoons. And I really loved going to work and having, these 6 foot tall characters from all of your favorite animations. And part of my job would sometimes be to watch 13 episodes of an animation. And I thought, oh, actually, this is something I might really want to do. And so that was something that really stuck with me. But certainly I didn't know what I wanted to do when I first moved to Canada. It wasn't that there was a direction to it. It just kind of came up and I went for it, started it, and that was how I found out that actually this is something that I'm really keen on.
Well, it's an interesting story how you got into animation. And I guess we'll get into how come you switched that up from going to become a lawyer versus the animation industry, and what process of thought did you go through to make that change?
So my degree was in law, so that was always the thing that I did. And while I was doing my degree, I was not sure that I would end up doing this. I remember being in the second week of university in a really hot jurisprudence class thinking, this is so boring. I just can't see me ever doing this. And I kind of realize it's like, well, I can't see me ever doing this, but I don't know what I'm going to do with myself for the next 4 years. So I'm just going to pedal it out here and see what happens. And so my law degree was not a burning ambition. It wasn't something that I went into really super passionate about. I did become passionate as I went through it. And curiously, I ended up really enjoying the jurisprudence stuff, which I didn't think I ever would. Um, so I just started to see sort of different sides. And then when I moved to Canada, initially the whole thing was, well, first of all, you're just looking for employment. And even if you come in with a law degree, that's really great in your home country. Nobody cares about it in Canada because it's not from Canada. So you're sort of starting from ground zero and you start from there and work your way into something. So the way that that animation job came about was actually through someone else that I was working with at another place. And her sister-in-law, I think it was, knew someone that was looking for an assistant, and was I interested? And I thought, okay, I can try that. And that was kind of how it came up. So it wasn't that I was sort of like furiously applying for jobs or anything. I was doing a terrible job at the time, and this opportunity came up, and then I moved into it. And while I was there, that was the thing that kind of led me into thinking, it's like, okay, actually, you could do this type of law.
Okay, I getcha. And now you've been a senior media lawyer for over 20 years now. What kind of passion do you have that's kind of made you continue on?
I've really started to get to know myself quite a lot over this, and I really love working with a group of people who are all trying to do something together. And that's really enjoyable, sort of to start the process, and you all know where you're trying to get to. You don't know how you're going to get there, and there's all these kind of different obstacles that you're going to have to work through. And I really like that process, and I enjoy it much more than just having sort of like objective targets to meet. Because like I also really like having my own discrete piece of work, but I like having that within a team. So it's like I've got my contribution and everyone else has their contribution. And if you've got a really great team, then what you end up with is a really great thing at the end. When you're dealing with people, the opportunity to learn is massive, and there's always something new that you can learn. And I find that I'm really curious still about learning, and I don't think I know everything.
And are there any considerable moments or highlights in your career that stick out to you the most?
I think the things that I really like to think about and to remember. It's one of the jobs that I did when I was on the other side to the unions. So I was negotiating against the unions. And when I left that job, there was one union in particular. They dropped by and they brought me gifts and stuff. And I think they said that I could get a membership to the union, actually. They would accept me. So I got on very well with them, even being on the other side. And I think that really tells how you fill your role. If the people that you work against, if you still have good relationships with them, there's no animosity and there's respect on both sides.
Any lows in particular that stand out to you?
Yes, in short, there absolutely are. But what I do with things that might conventionally be considered a low is I kind of reframe them. They're just sort of different opportunities. They opened up different things. That there was one job that I had, and the role was made redundant quite shortly after I started. And actually, that position what ended up leading me into working in a different part of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
If that role hadn't gone that way, there's a whole section of work and experience and very positive experiences as well that I would have missed out on. So I don't actually look back on that as a low. It's like, oh, that was just a really interesting kind of curveball.
Yeah, all learning experiences, right? It's best not to
Yeah,
have any
yeah.
regrets. It's more like, oh, what have I learned from this? And then move on.
Yeah, and also the thing is, I think sometimes you just get very personal about these things. You start to think, it's happened to me, what did I do? And sometimes actually it's nothing at all to do with you. It's a process, and you've just either you're collateral damage in the process or you've fallen between the cracks. It really has nothing to do with you. that is really difficult when you're dealing with no job. You know, it's like you can have that sort of magnanimous approach a bit after the event, like at the time you're going through it, like, oh my God, what's going to happen?
Mhm.
So it's really daunting, but just more helpful. And it gets away. I'm not a fan of like a blame type of mentality. It's
Mhm.
like, oh, that, you know, that was their fault. They should, well, you know, things happen, right?
Mm.
We can't plan everything that's going to happen in a day or anything like that. So you have to kind of be open and flexible about what comes up.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then what would you say is the most challenging part of being a lawyer in the media industry?
So saying it in the media industry is really broad because depending on the type of lawyer that you are, you're going to have different challenges. But I think one of the difficulties for a lot of people is to manage the work and the people, because you sort of you need to have really good relationships with people in order to get things done and to be able, you know, sometimes the things that you're trying to do, they are almost impossible. So the relationships that you have with people are key. And sometimes it can be really easy to see people as being the problem. Like they're the obstacle to you getting this deal done or getting what you want. And I think that's a real conflict, is like how you can actually use your relationships with people in a positive way.
Are you able to share a little bit more on like what your day to day is like being a lawyer?
It's really varied. I mean, the thing is, it's, you know, there are certain kind of constants. So for me, sort of working within the like a talent agency, I have a lot of contact with the agents,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in terms of what they need to have happen on a day-to-day basis. So I can come in and often do with, it's like, okay, today I'm going to do these things. I've got this contract, I've got these phone calls, these meetings. And then you come in and there's an email and it's like, I need this done by the end of the day. And this is like a 30-page thing, but all of the other work that you've got, you now need to try and find a way to do it, and other stuff comes up. So it's a pretty dynamic flow, and you need to be quite flexible because, you know, your best laid plans do not always happen, maybe sometimes do not often happen, because you have other things that come up that you need to deal with, and then everyone else who had thought that you're going to get to their work that day, they're still expecting for you to do that.
Mm.
They don't know about all of this other stuff that's come up.
No, and they probably don't care because they care
No,
about their
not
thing,
at
right?
all. Not at all. The one thing, the only thing anybody cares about is what you're doing for them.
Yeah,
Yeah, completely.
absolutely. Totally get it.
Yeah. So it's yeah, like I say, it's really dynamic. I mean, what I try to do, and this is a personal thing, is I like to talk to people about problems. I find that it's better than, you know, having a volley of emails going back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So sometimes if there's something, it's like it's not that clear cut. Like I just find it easier to speak to them over the phone or in person. It's like, okay, what's going on? What's the background? And then that helps to inform how I approach it. Or it might be that actually someone thinks this is really important, and then once you've got some more detail, you're like, well, actually, no, it's not, and this is why it's not. So how about if you do such and such? And, you know, so you just get the background rather than jumping straight into trying to solve the problem that's being presented to you.
Yeah, don't always take things for face value as they are, as they're written. It's always good to take that next step and making contact with that person and then drawing out some of the answers from them to better understand their situation and their needs.
Yeah, because also the thing is, they're only going to be focused on half of the story, which is their half.
Mm.
So there is the other part of the story that you don't know anything about yet. And so if you only listen to that first half and you don't ask any questions, you will only know half of what is going on. It's like, so I find it quite useful to have that dialogue so you can flush out. It's like, okay, what's happening? What might be the different ways of doing this?
Yeah, exactly. How important is it to have a mentor in your life?
I think having a mentor is like having any sort of relationship. A good one is invaluable, and with a bad one, you're probably better off without it. The thing is, I think with mentors, you need to sort of be clear about what you're looking for.
Hmm.
It's like I had one person because I decided I'm like I need a mentor. That's what I need. And I approached this woman and she absolutely wasn't keen. And I sort of followed up. We met for coffee and stuff a few times and we chatted. And she was never actually that keen, but she kind of went along with it. And I did say to her at one point, I was like, what I'd like to do is for you to get something out of this relationship as well, because
Hmm.
it's not just about me
Yeah.
getting stuff. And it was never structured. I mean, we would have these kind of casual chats, but there is one thing that she said to me which has actually been incredibly useful and really valuable. And she was telling me about a situation where someone within her organization was going for promotion. And that person was saying, well, I do all these things, and I, like listing out a whole range of activities that they did because they like doing these things, and and they were interested in it, and so they were making a case for their promotion off the back of that. And she had asked the person, well, how does any of these activities benefit the business? Because your manager is only interested in what benefits the business. They are much less interested in what benefits you. If you think about it and you apply a bit of common sense to it, you can frame what benefits you towards being a benefit of the business. But you never present it as this is what I want to do because I will grow this way or I will do this.
Hmm.
That may be and often is true. That is not the way to get it over the line.
Absolutely. I totally
The way
agree.
to the way to do it is to say how what you're proposing is going to benefit the business.
Yes, always. What insights or advice would you offer to those starting their careers in the industry today?
The main thing is really to start to build a network because I think that has been time and again, that has been one of the things that's really helped me out, either when I've been looking for new roles or if there's something I don't know how to do. Build a network and also try and find things that you have to offer.
Hmm.
And at the beginning of your career, that might not feel as though you've got a lot, but just offering things to people tends to get you further than asking for things from people. So if you can find a kind of some sort of synergistic relationship where there's something that you can offer in exchange for something else, that tends to work really nicely. But you are dealing with people and lots of people have different needs. And so I find often if I'm speaking to people and there's something that I either know or I've heard of that I think they might be interested in, I'll mention it. It's not always the case that people are interested in what I have to say, actually, but I'll just mention it. And, if someone's interested, then, I share information and things like that. And it doesn't mean that, you have to give something of huge value, even information or things that you've heard about. It's like, okay, just passing on things.
Yeah, it's a small gesture, even if it's like an introduction to somebody, maybe someone in their
Yeah.
family or friends network. And it's like, well, actually, I can pair you guys up and have a little bit of a chat. It can be as simple as that.
Yeah, or even, like information sources, it might be like just particular places you're like, oh yeah, this is a really cool place to check
Yeah.
out.
Mm.
Because not everyone has access to the same sort of resources that you do.
What is something that makes you feel unstoppable?
I think I have this relentless curiosity. Like I just think I have a sense that I don't know everything. And one of the nice things about that is you're just curious. Um, the other thing that's quite good about curiosity is that in terms of a personal experience, it's hard for curiosity and fear to inhabit the same brain space, I think, at the same time. When you're faced with something new, like fear is quite a normal response to have to it, but curiosity is another one that's a possible response, and it's a little bit more helpful.
Valerie, your journey through the challenging landscape of burnout and emerging stronger is truly inspiring. I'd love to delve deeper into the invaluable insights and personal experiences you've gained, shedding light on the path to healing. Can you share a bit about your journey and what led to the burnout?
My experience of burnout is that it wasn't one thing. It
Mm.
was many things across a long period of time. And it was also me ignoring things across a long period of time. So when it sort of finally, when I sort of realized it, it was only because someone said, they were like, and also someone who didn't know me that well, but had met me professionally a few times and had met me the last time had been just after I'd come back from a holiday. And so I thought that mentally and emotionally and all that stuff, I was in pretty good shape. And this person, she was like, I think you might be suffering with occupational burnout. And that really landed in a particular way. I was like, oh, yeah, okay. Because I'd come back from holiday and I wasn't feeling any better or any different or any more rested or any more interested or any more anything.
So
It just kind of,
what
go
were
on.
the signs of that lack of interest? I presume, so you just mentioned it.
Yeah, I mean, it was lack of interest, lack of energy. I'm normally the kind of person who has a fair bit of energy. I generally have, like I was saying, like curiosity about things.
Mm.
I those things were absent. Like even for like I love going to the theater. There's all sorts of things like I like doing, and
Mm.
I wasn't showing an interest in the normal things that I would do, and I noticed that, and I noticed that I didn't have energy, and I didn't really know what it was or how to deal with it. I think like I have like a reasonable kind of self-care routine anyhow. I do meditation, I do yoga, not so much because I was thinking about it in a self-care context, but over time I've just developed various practices and things I do.
Mm.
So there's a lot of stuff I was doing, and probably if I wasn't doing those things, I might have reached that point of total burnout and exhaustion sooner. It may have been worse. There are many things that would have probably happened, but I think those things kind of propped me up to a point. And then it just got to a point that there were no more band-aids to be had.
Mm.
I was all band-aid.
Were there new habits forming because of this? Did you notice yourself doing stuff in the evenings or even during the day that was different than your normal pattern?
Not really. I mean, the thing is, I think for some people, like so obviously food, substances, shopping,
Mm.
addictive behaviors, those are all the kind of things you'd expect. I was doing none of those things.
Okay.
Um I was irritable, but I think, like I say, because I'd sort of like been going through this for quite a while, I don't have an accurate monitor for my own irritability. So I just knew that I'd been irritable for a while. Sometimes it was
Mm.
worse than others, but there wasn't anything that was particularly sort of scientific. Like I didn't see, I wasn't eating more, I wasn't particularly eating less, I wasn't eating particularly different. You know, when I didn't feel great, what I would try to do is things that would help me to feel better, right? Not particularly do things that would help me to feel worse. And I sort of have a sense, like I said, like because I do things like meditation and stuff, I'm quite aware of the role that certain types of stimulants can have and how short term that feel good experience is, and that the underlying problem is still there in the morning. And I can't really be bothered with that. Like I don't want to feel good if I still have the problem in the morning.
Hmm.
I'll just skip the feeling good part and just try and work out the problem.
How did that impact your personal and professional life?
Yeah, so I think this is interesting because I think in my professional life, I put up more of a facade. And so people who knew me really well, they were able to see through it. And, as I moved through the process at different points, people said, yeah, I could tell that something wasn't quite right, but I didn't know what to say or I didn't know how to say it. So there was quite a lot of, yeah, and in some ways that actually made it easier to manage, is that professionally there was this barrier that I didn't really want. I didn't want to let it down and to show the crumbling structure behind it. And in some ways that meant I had to put some effort into holding the structure up. Ultimately that got to be too much effort,
Hmm.
and I just didn't have the energy that was required to hold those things up anymore. And I was like, actually, I might just need to let all these things fall because the effort was involved. Whereas in my personal life, I did that very much less. So I was just kind of miserable, grumpy, irritable, those sorts of things.
Yeah. So
Sometimes I was fine. But there was much less pretense within my personal life than there was in my professional life.
Did you get the sense that you were running on a low tank, as in no fuel left in the
Uh,
gas tank?
yeah, I mean, it wasn't low. There was nothing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there was nothing left. There were no resources and stuff. I mean, some of the things that I found that was really helpful is like when you start to deal with burnout, you get all sorts of language, and some of the things that I personally found really useful was actually some of the medical language when it started to talk about things like your nervous system and
Mm.
your parasympathetic system, and that started to be useful. But some of the general chat around burnout and the condition and all that kind of stuff, that I found not helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just chit chat, isn't it? Until you really break it down in a medical sense, and how all these things play a big part, especially your nervous system, and then the different states you can be in. I think there's three different states.
Yeah. And what I found is the more that I got to understand that, that was something I could start to influence. I couldn't control it, but I could start to influence it. And so I wasn't trying to change my mood. I wasn't trying to change this. I wasn't trying to change the symptoms. I was trying to change the underlying stuff that was happening. That was actually very helpful.
Yeah, the root cause, which generally we are not really educated on that, right? We
No.
always cure the symptom, never the root cause.
Yeah. Yeah.
What steps did you take to acknowledge and address your burnout?
After I was sort of told this by someone, and I think what had happened is I'd sort of had a hunch myself. So it wasn't that this was a revelation, this was just confirmation. Um, so I had to take very practical steps about work because I needed to manage what I was able to give out to work. So that was something that I needed to address. And then I think the other thing, which was actually quite difficult, was to start to prioritize my own well-being. And I think in our society and culture, normally when you start to prioritize yourself, people think you're selfish or you should be doing things to help other people and things like that. And so I had to prioritize it in a particular way that I couldn't be challenged about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I sort of had to carve out, like safe space for being able to do that. And I mean, I was really fortunate. I had a brilliant reflexologist, an acupuncturist. I had all these people holding me together. They were amazing. And they had some really like positive and helpful suggestions and different things. Again, because I do meditation, that was something that I was able to go on retreats and remove myself into, like more quiet, restful, contemplative environments rather than being sort of pushed and pulled in all kinds of situations. And the thing is, like, it took time because there's not, when you start looking, if you Google burnout, or certainly when I did this, there is nothing that really comes up. I spoke to my doctor about it because I thought, well, the NHS must know something about burnout. And I was really surprised, but she didn't come back with anything that was that helpful. I mean, she came back with a psychological safety matrix, which was interesting in the sense of being an interesting thing to look at. It was not in any way helpful for dealing with what I was experiencing. And so it's just very interesting. It is not really something that is dealt with.
No,
It,
although a lot of people do have burnout. We're working to the max all the time. We don't prioritize ourselves a lot of the time. And our hours are getting longer at work. And we put more demands on ourselves these days that more people are burning out yet for any sort of social services out there. They don't really provide any guidance. It's all based on research, Googling, and then
Mhm.
going through a rabbit hole of finding different things that leads you to another thing. And like you said, then that led you to reflexology and acupuncturists. You get information from them, you go back home, Google it, and then find something else that
Mhm.
leads you into another path. And it takes you in all sorts of different directions, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is the worst time to start to deal with burnout is when you're burnt out, because you don't you need it, you actually
Yeah.
need to deal with it then, but you don't have the energy to do it.
No.
So in a sense, the best thing to do is when you feel good is to start to work out what are the things that sustain you to feel good. You know, like when you have energy, or you
Mm.
sort of like, you know, like if you're a little bit, you're like tired and stuff like that, or you just need to recharge, what are the things that help you to feel that way? Because then when you feel really terrible, you've done some of the research. You're like, actually, this thing can help. Like, it's not going to help for like weeks and months, but it might get me through till next week. And so just it's almost like creating a toolbox of these different things that can help at different times. And that can be really useful, because I have noticed this, like when I'm really flat and it's like, oh my God, I've got to do all this stuff. And if it wasn't for the fact that I already had a lot of these things in place, the energy that it would take would actually mean that it's insurmountable.
That's a useful tip to know. And then what kind of lifestyle changes and self-care practices did you use, or what played a significant role in your recovery? Because I know you mentioned acupuncture and reflexology and meditation. Was there anything else?
Friends,
Mm.
friends, lunches, and sunshine. Often at the same time, actually. I think having good friends that you can just be yourself with, that you don't need to put up a front for. Um, Not the sort of people where you feel that you've got these one-upmanship relationships. Like, I mean, genuine friends. That is really helpful, because you feel quite terrible sometimes on your own and quite low energy, and you can get quite a lot from the companionship of friends.
Yeah, it's
It,
relaxing to the mind and to the body. How did your workplace respond when you communicated your burnout?
they were really confused, because I mean, actually, one of the perceptions that was communicated back to me is they didn't understand it because I seemed fine. And so I think if you're the kind of person who tends to make everything seem fine,
Mm.
it's more convenient to people to not look any further.
Mm-hmm.
I was slightly irritated by that, because I think it's not even just me. I think there's a lot of stuff within mental health and depression and all sorts of stuff that people are like, oh my God, but I thought they were okay. It's like, oh my God, you didn't bother to ask. You know, it's like you're looking at a surface thing and you are making your own assumptions about what you're seeing, but you haven't actually bothered to engage with the person. So you don't really know this is what you think, and what you think can be wrong. So, and often is.
Because that inspired me to ask another question in response to that initial one. But what questions should one ask their employees about their well-being? Is there a particular question that's helpful that will bring out that kind of information?
I think there are different ways to do this, because if you're dealing with someone who's saying, look, I think I'm burnt out, that's one kind of situation. If you are trying to create a healthy work environment, then how you go about that is going to be different. And something like that you can do more as a team or within groups and things like that. And that can be quite supportive as well. Whereas if you have one individual who's saying, listen, this is where I'm at, then I really think the first thing that needs to happen is to ask the person, okay, what do you think you need? And that might mean that the person looks back at you totally blank, going, what do you mean? I don't know what I need, because if I knew what I needed, I'd be doing it. And that also is okay, because you've now started the conversation, right? And so then you can say, okay, let's catch up in a couple of days, have a think about how you're feeling and what might help you to feel better or less stress or more in control or less overwhelmed or any of those things, right? Whatever it is you're feeling, first of all, acknowledge that, get to know what that thing is.
Mm.
And then let's have a chat in a few days and see how we can start off trying to work out what could possibly be done to help you to deal with these things. And it's probably not going to be a 2-week or a 1-week fix or anything like that, but you're starting the conversation. And also I think it changes the mindset of the person who's having that experience, because you start to think, okay, there might be a way to fix this. What is that? What can I try? Rather than sort of feeling that they've got to navigate the work situation, navigate their family situation, maybe navigate the NHS, navigate this. It's like you've got everything that you need to deal with, and you don't have any checkpoints that you're not responsible for creating.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like most people who have got themselves into this situation, they did it because they did not realize what they were doing. So if they knew it that well, they wouldn't have done it. Right? Yeah. This is not a willful thing. It's often, I think, it's probably the perfectionists, the people pleasers, the ones who want to think that they're high flyers, or if you've got any sort of reasonable combination of those kind of like qualities. If you take a lot of pride in your work, there's all sorts of stuff that can contribute to it. But the reason that you got there is because you were pursuing something else and you forgot to pay any attention to your own mental and physical well-being.
Were there any early warning signs in hindsight that you wish you had recognized, or things might have done differently to prevent the burnout?
I think you get better at recognizing the warning signs after you've been through it. So now I get a sort of sense within my body when I'm pushing too much. And it's not that, all of a sudden I've become so fragile that I can't do anything. I can still do a lot, and like at least as much as I did before. So there's not been like a change in like mental or physical capacity or anything, but you just get a sense it's like, this doesn't feel right. And so rather than ignoring that and pushing through it, so like I pull back from that now. It's like, okay, I don't need to be doing that thing tonight, actually.
Yeah.
Whereas before, I just sort of keep going and just, it's like if I had something I'd committed to do, I'd just be like, yeah, I've got to do that. Even if it's social stuff, I treat it, in this much the same way as like a professional commitment. Whereas now it's like, actually, no, I don't need to do that.
Yeah. And then what advice would you give to someone else who's going through burnout?
The first thing is to really just give yourself a little bit of space. Like if you can find some sort of way to get like mental and physical space, and just to kind of understand what's going on with you, because sometimes you're so busy doing things and filling roles and being something that you don't actually know how you're feeling about anything. And that was one of the things about readjusting my work pattern, is that that's what needed to happen, because I couldn't be the lawyer that's on call to give that advice and to be available and reliable and all of those things that everyone wants me to be, including me, at the same time as I'm trying to work out, it's like, what is it I'm feeling? Like, how do I deal with the thing that's going on if I don't even know what that is? So I think you need to have a little bit of space within which to be able to do that. And for some people, that will be something that you can do alone. Some people will do it with like a best friend, or, like just being able to talk to them, or a partner or whatever. But you cannot start to deal with something until you know what it is. And the only way you'll know what it is to just actually kind of like clear away some of the other commitments and things that are pulling you. And then you start to get a sense for what you're feeling.
No, that's really helpful. Valerie, we appreciate your joining us today, and thank you for sharing your remarkable healing journey with us. Thanks everyone for listening to Uplift and Elevate. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, follow us on Instagram, and reach out if you're interested in getting involved and learning more about our work.